listener production.
Hi, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. It's the last day of Parliament for the year and the government has been scrambling to get laws passed ahead of what's shaping up to be an unofficial election campaign over the summer. Next year's vote will be the first in Australia's history where there'll be more millennial and Gen Z voters than boomers at the ballot box. Because of that, social media influencers are expected to have more sway than ever in the outcome.
The conversation of this always, for most people, lands on free speech. And I think it needs to be landing on the corporations that use algorithms to show us certain things, because they are essentially broadcasters, but they're pretending not to be. They're pretending like it's out of their hands.
So what role should influencers be playing in our elections? That's in the second half of this episode. First, though, it's time for the headlines with Antoinette Lattouf on Thursday, November 28.
G'day, Sasha. Hey, everyone. So it's D-Day in Canberra today, and there are 37 bills listed as priority on the final scheduled sitting day of Parliament for the year. Last night, Labor circulated 36 pieces of legislation it wants dealt with today, prompting a pretty confused response from crossbenchers. So where to from here? There'll be a Senate debate on the divisive social media ban for under 16s. That's now passed the lower house, with Labor hoping it'll be voted through the upper house today and passed into law. But don't worry, if that does pass, it won't come into effect for another 12 months. It's also expected that some key legislative measures on migration, electoral reform, and a new Reserve Bank structure will also go before the Senate for a vote today. But the approach of Labor trying to fast-track dozens of bills in 24 hours has been slammed by some as chaotic. That's what's being reported by The Guardian. And there are reports crossbenchers are considering forming a voting bloc to just oppose all of the bills together.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Look, meantime, there is doubt about the passage of the government's policy to increase taxes on superannuation accounts worth more than $3 million. That's been left off the list of those 37 priority bills. And talks between the government and opposition about new electoral laws that'll limit political donations have also hit a snag, with the coalition apparently trying to drag out the discussion past the final sitting day. Now, that you could argue that's in the coalition's best interest, because there is just this speculation growing that we're going to have an early election called next year, and that could be happening as soon as February or March. And if that happens, this would be, Antoinette, the last sitting day before we all head to the polls. So it's Labor's last chance to deliver on a bunch of key policy promises.
Yeah, and there's nothing cute about going into a new election when it's obvious that there are a whole bunch of policies that you promised in the lead up to the last election that you haven't been able to see through.
Well, one person who won't be part of today's final sitting day is Senator Lydia Thorpe. So the crossbencher has been suspended from the Senate until the end of the sitting week, which is today, after throwing paper at Pauline Hanson yesterday. More on that in a second. So this all happened after the One Nation leader attempted to have independent Senator Fatima Payman, who was born in Afghanistan, investigated over her dual citizenship. Hanson alleged the former Labor senator had not provided enough documentation to prove she had revoked that Afghani citizenship. Payman then accused Hanson of racism, a claim she was asked to withdraw.
Senator Hanson's quote, "I challenge anyone to tell me one thing that I've said that is racist." She has said, "I believe we're in danger of being swamped by Asians." In 1998 policy speech, she said Aboriginality would no longer exist under her party's policies. In another statement, she says, "We're bringing in people from South Africa at the moment. There's a huge amount coming into Australia who have disease. They've got AIDS. If that is not racist, what is it?"
Yeah, quite fiery. And following the exchange, Thorpe ripped up a copy of Hanson's motion, throwing it in her direction, and that is what ultimately got her suspended, Antoinette.
Yes, and Senator Thorpe was also heard calling Pauline Hanson a convicted racist. So this comes just weeks after Greens Senator Mehreen Faruqi won a court case against Hanson, which ruled that Hanson had engaged in racial discrimination against Senator Faruqi when she tweeted that the Green senator should pack your bags and piss off back to Pakistan.
Senator Thorpe.
So that is Senator Thorpe getting the last word in before she left the upper house. She also had her middle finger up in the air. And then Senate leader Penny Wong moved for Senator Thorpe's suspension, and that vote passed 46-11, and it was backed by Labor, the Coalition, One Nation, Ralph Babbitt, Jackie Lambie and David Pocock, but opposed by the Greens. And Hanson said that she was pleased by the suspension.
Since Senator Thorpe has been in this place, it has been the downfall of this chamber because of her aggression towards and calling each and every one of us who is white that we are colonialists that have stolen the land.
Less than 24 hours after a 60-day ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah was announced, US President Joe Biden says he's starting a new push for peace in Gaza. The US president has posted to X saying the White House will work with Turkey, Egypt and Qatar to broker a ceasefire deal, this time between Israel and Hamas. Aside from a brief truce between the sides exactly a year ago, the brutalities haven't stopped since the October 7 attacks and Israel's subsequent obliteration of the Gaza Strip, which has killed more than 40,000 people, mainly women and children. And if you're sceptical, this is more empty rhetoric, it's probably because a number of deals to end the bombardment of Gaza have been discussed, but none have been successful. There is something different this time because this is the first time the US president has suggested an end to the violence since the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for war crimes and crimes against humanity. And as we know, the US has supplied most of the weaponry and a lot of political cover for this violence.
Yeah, and it's interesting with Joe Biden, the clock is absolutely ticking on his time in the White House. Is this what he wants his legacy to be? You know, does he want to be seen as the president who ended the war in Gaza? We know with the ceasefire agreements, because, we haven't really talked about it for a while. Qatar recently suspended its efforts to help mediate this deal because Qatar wanted both sides to shift their positions. So right now, Hamas is insisting on ending the war and wants a full withdrawal of Israeli forces, but Israel remains determined to destroy Hamas. So both have these ideological ideas that they're locked on, that they're not willing to budge on, and that is what seems to be the barrier for a ceasefire. And look, I want to bring it back to some more positive news where we've seen displaced Lebanese residents start returning to their homes after the ceasefire deal came into force between Israel and Hezbollah. You know, when we've seen the images, of course, while they're smiling and there's been dancing in the streets, they're returning to rubble in a lot of places. So it's tempered with that grief that people have lost everything. So while positive that we've seen this ceasefire come about, obviously, it's going to take time for a lot of people to rebuild, but some positive scenes coming out of Lebanon overnight. And now to something very silly and frivolous. Last night, Sydney hosted the 2024 TikTok Awards. You can't deny the huge impact the social media app has had on internet and meme culture over the last 4 years, with its popularity really exploding during the pandemic. So this event last night was about recognising some of the biggest Australian names and accounts of the last year. A surprise winner was Dr. Karl, who took out High Quality Content Creator of the Year.
The way that you poop is a thing called peristalsis.
Oh, I just love that he was the winner, Sasha, because I had him on the weekend briefing back at the end of September. And if you want to have a look for that episode, it says, Dr. Karl says OnlyFans can save the planet. He had said at the time that the only reason he got on TikTok was to try and help correct so much scientific misinformation, and it was such a good chat. He's such an interesting human being. He's in his late 70s, and I just love, because TikTok so often is seen as somewhere that your auntie, your grandparents can't figure it out. Not only did Dr. Karl figure it out, he's become a sensation on TikTok. The other thing he spoke to me about was OnlyFans, Sasha, and how he thinks it's useful for climate change. But we are here to talk about TikTok, so if you want to know why OnlyFans and Dr. Karl are the next big thing, I'll leave that with you to check it out, September 27.
Yeah, another weekend briefing guest who took out an award was Royal Otis, the band-winning Music Artist of the Year. And no surprises, given 2 of their songs went crazy viral on TikTok this year, among them this one.
Do you have to let it linger? Do you have to? Do you have to? Do you have to let it linger?
I Mate, that's one of my absolute favourite songs of 2024. Comedy Creator of the Year went to Eli Matangi.
Yo, it's 3 a.m. in the morning and there's a black Audi parked out front of my house. Turns out that was my ride to the airport as I make my way to Sydney for the TikTok Awards. Got me feeling like a celebrity here, mate.
And just to show how bizarre TikTok can be, the winner of Video of the Year, which you could argue is the biggest award of the night, it went to 23-year-old Aussie Leah Holton. Now, this video is literally her sitting in a car lip-syncing to this song.
These roads of flames are catching a fire.
Yeah, so it goes for 12 seconds all up. It has 941 million views and over 56 million likes. So she's beautiful, but also what is TikTok where this is the most popular video of the year?
Well, that was my question. Is she super hot? I mean, and not that I think that trumps everything else created, but like what else could it be if someone is just lip syncing?
I think it speaks to like the randomness of TikTok, because some of the other really popular videos that came out in the last 12-ish months, there was one that was literally just someone zooming in and out on a bowl of chocolate-covered strawberries, and it has millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of likes. Like, I don't know what it is, and it's part of why I love TikTok, because I feel like there's almost no formula. You don't have to be hot. You could be a bowl of chocolate-covered strawberries and you can go viral. So in this case, yes, she's pretty good looking, but yeah, people just really identified with her lip syncing in the car. So yeah, that was a bit of fun. To finish our headlines off today, Antoinette, thank you so much for joining us. And we talked about it at the top of the show, was this last sitting day of the year. And now we're getting into a discussion about influencers and the upcoming federal election. How much sway should they really have?
Hey, Bension here. Today is the final day of federal parliament for the year, and things have been absolutely manic in Canberra, with the government trying desperately to get a huge chunk of its agenda into law before parliament packs up for the year. It fires the unofficial starting gun on the next federal election campaign, and pretty much everyone expects we'll be heading to the polls in May next year. Online, just as in Parliament, people have been debating everything from banning kids from social media to cracking down on misinformation to capping international student numbers and whether the government should help you buy a house. This coming election will be the first in Australian history when millennials and Gen Zs will make up the majority of voters, replacing boomers as the most influential and important political constituency. And that means social media users, influencers, and politicians trying to be influencers online will be more important in this election than any we've seen in our lifetimes. So what role could and should influencers be playing in our politics this election? Conrad Benjamin doesn't love the term influencer, but he's the host and creator behind Punters Politics, a YouTube channel that aims to help navigate the divisive world of Australian politics, and he's on a quest to make it simple for the everyday punter. Conrad, welcome to the briefing. Can influencers influence elections?
Well, I think from recent analysis from the USA, I suspect no. I think people think they can, but I think celebrity endorsements have been running for a while, and now we saw the DNC pick up a lot of influencers to endorse them, and it didn't seem to budge the needle. I think bigger factors are at play, but I think they're part of the playing field now, so it's here with us.
Well, maybe an election that was all about like cost of living was not going to be particularly influenced by Lady Gaga and Beyonce, but not everyone who's an influencer is that level. Do you think that sort of regular people like yourself perhaps, can have more of an influence on politics?
I wonder if it's not necessarily like the opinion I have, but the media format that I bring. What I'm really trying to do is communicate complex, boring political policy and everything that the news media kind of dresses up in a very inaccessible academic sort of way. I'm trying to make that accessible to the everyday punter as much as possible. And I think that model that's, YouTube, Instagram, the Joe Rogans, that has introduced a new media format into the media landscape that I think has been embraced and people now look to as part of their news media diet. And I think that it's created a need for politicians and policymakers to engage with the policies on a level that people can understand and making it far more accessible for everybody. And also with politicians using those platforms to be authentic, because news media and these corporate entities kind of put everything at an arm's length and a distance behind producers, behind managers, behind teams of people. And I think punters are looking for authenticity. And I think the new mediums that have come out with YouTube and the podcast provides them with that. And I think it's now become an expectation for politicians to engage on this level in these new media formats.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is among the politicians who turns to TikTok and Instagram Reels sometimes to get his message across. Some politicians are better at it than others. What do you think when you see some of that content?
I think it depends how it's done. I'm seeing politicians do it really well and politicians not do it really well. If I was to give a scorecard from Albo, I think he's got his team of people with his nice little camera and his scripts, and he doesn't realise that the social media medium requires him to hold it himself, speak candidly, don't have a script, and be authentic. The platform rewards authenticity, and that's what people are looking for. That's what punters are looking for on TikTok to see. And so I would say independent politicians like Monique Ryan, David Pocock. I just saw Monique Ryan today explaining her position, why she was not going to back the social media ban for kids, gave her reasons, and it was herself with the camera giving some key points. Didn't seem like there was a team there. I'm sure she does have a team, but it seems like she's just being genuine. And I would say Albo and Dutto, it's not native to them, and you can see they don't understand it, and you can see the team there. I would say dip the camera quality, Albo, and hold it yourself and see if that helps.
Some US influencers have claimed that they've been approached by political parties for endorsements and offered money also. Do you worry that might be something that could happen in Australia?
Do I worry that a politician might approach me with a checkbook to get their endorsement? We'll see how large that number is. But I mean, it's inevitable, right? Because that's essentially what influencers are. Marketing has now just infiltrated our friend groups and just everyday punters. And so now everyone's selling you something, no matter what it is. And so politics is another product to sell. So of course, it's definitely going to happen for sure.
For someone who's not a content creator or an influencer, how do you make money doing this?
At the moment, it's punters on Patreon just donating. It's kind of like OnlyFans, but for people that like what I'm doing and just decide to give me money for that. That's probably the main source of income. YouTube pays okay. Instagram pays bugger all. TikTok, nothing. And that's probably it. I mean, brand deals as well. Like brands can approach me and go, hey, do you want to sponsor this? And then for me, I go, is it in line with what I'm trying to do? And then I make those decisions from there. But at the moment, it's mainly just punters who like that I'm getting the message out that I am, pointing out the corporate scams, the political scams that are pulled on everyday punters all the time. And they go, you need to keep doing that. And I think I like that model. I think that keeps me serving them. That keeps me going, okay, what is it? You guys want me to keep doing this? Great, I'll keep doing it as long as I can feed myself.
You're obviously someone who is in the political realm on the internet, but there's a lot of influencers who aren't. And there seems to be quite a bit of pressure for, particularly in the last US election that we just saw, for people to come out with their political views. Do you think that pressure is right for a musician, for example?
Yeah, that has been the trend recently of people, especially in politics, and especially maybe the political left has always said, what do you believe? What's your stance on this? And it's turned into some kind of purity code and some kind of purity test to say, well, you didn't denounce this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this. And I think it's a normal extension of, we've been bred to be just little capitalists that now use our purchasing power to support things we want. So now we've injected that into what we buy. and then who we support and who we listen to. So then I guess some sectors of the electorate have demanded people they like to take a stance on something that aligns with them. But I wonder if there's been a massive backlash against that now, where people are kind of sick of it. And I wonder if that's what, I mean, this term woke can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but I wonder if that at its core is what the quote unquote woke backlash has been, of people signaling their beliefs about certain things, and people maybe are requiring it less now. I'm not sure. I'm still watching it play out, but that seems to be a battle going on, whether you should or you shouldn't. I think Donald Trump's a great example of like, just do what you want to do and never back down. And that seems to be working for him. So maybe you don't have to pander to the crowd every single day to make sure your followers you're doing what they want. I guess that's audience capture, right? You're trying to make money by giving your audience what they want, but that'll change your opinions and what you do.
One of the outcomes of, I guess, the democratization of journalism in this way, that anyone can kind of put information out into the world in a way that 20 years ago they couldn't, is the kind of content that you make. But it's also disinformation, misinformation. People who are charismatic on the internet can convince people, even if they have no backing of it by evidence or facts. Is that something that you worry about?
My focus always tends to go to like the power centers and higher up the chain of these things. And I think the misinformation conversation is an important one, but it's always been with us. I'm reading the book now, Nexus by Noah Yuval Harari, and he goes through the history of misinformation and disinformation through the history from the witch trials. And you see the patterns are kind of the same. The conversation of this always, for most people, lands on free speech. And I think it needs to be landing on the corporations that use algorithms to show us certain things, because they are essentially broadcasters, but they're pretending not to be. They're pretending like it's out of their hands. They can't do anything about it. And I think if we focus on the actual power centers rather than letting this disinformation conversation end in censoring Uncle Daryl from his crazy views on Facebook, like let him have those views, but we should be discussing what distribution looks like, and we should be able to see what these algorithms are feeding to us. We should be able to see the back end, what they're prioritizing. We should have more control over these algorithms. So maybe for me, it's not about information, it's about control over what we see. If I would love an option to switch off an algorithm, to say only show me things from today, to make the algorithm serve me, so that if Facebook want me to use their algorithm, they'll need to make it appeal to me and not to the advertisers they sell me to.
What do you think this federal election is going to look like online?
I think it's going to look like the same old tricks, at least this next election, the same old tricks just on Facebook and Instagram. There might be a few, new dirty tactics played. I don't know if deep fakes are going to pop up more and more. Like that stuff's going to pop up more and more. I know they're getting more sophisticated with the disinformation stuff, with Facebook groups, farms of people making memes to try and convince people in that way. So I think warfare's shifting, but I think it's going to be harder for us to see, because we're not going to know if that meme came from a little think tank that the Liberal or Labor Party have funded to make me swayed in that way. My dad or sister or brother, they might see it in their echo chamber, but I might not. So I think we're going to see a splintering of messaging to target people specifically. And it's going to be hard for us to get a cohesive picture of what it actually looks like. I can only tell you what it would look like for me. I would say trust nothing that you see pushed by corporate. Anyone that sort of makes money with advertising, that's their customer. They're going to be pushing something that serves their advertisers or investors. I would just say when it comes to an election, keep it simple. Pick what you care about and go look at what the politicians vote for. Theyvoteforyou.org will tell you how they vote, and don't listen to what the politicians say or what their dumb ad says. Just go check out what they vote. I'd say tune out, ignore any political advertising, and just look at how they vote and go with that.
Will you be endorsing any politicians?
No. I've made my platform very much policy focused. So my main messaging is I don't care who you vote for. Just make sure who you vote for is doing what you want them to do. And I'm just looking for good policy. So whichever party is going to put in the policy that I would want. This 20% HEX debt sounds pretty bloody good to me. So that sounds like something I'd back. How about cancelling it altogether? That sounds like something I'd back. Whoever's going to bring me something that benefits me or benefits society, like up royalties on the gas that we give away for free every single year, I'll support them. But I'll check their voting record before I vote for them to make sure that they're not just lying to me.
Thanks so much for joining us on The Briefing.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Conrad Benjamin from Punters Politics there. That's it for this episode of The Briefing. We'd love it if you could share this ep with someone you think might enjoy it. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast and on TikTok and YouTube. Just search Listener Newsroom. We'll be back in your feed this afternoon from 3. I'm Ben Sion-Siebert. Catch you next time.
Listener.